What's up, guys, and welcome back to another video. Today we got a lot of stuff to talk about. A lot of things have happened in the Raptors world over the last week or so, and today we're going to start off with something that recently hit the news, and it's the Ben Simmons Toronto Raptors trade interest stuff, and an honestly ridiculous trade that came out yesterday night. And I'm just going to jump right into it and say the Raptors being interested in Ben Simmons is a good match. I think that if you were to give Philly Kyle Lowry, and I've talked about this a lot of times, it would solve a lot of their issues as one of the teams with a high turnover rate. They have a guard who can shoot around Joel Embiid. It just makes a lot of sense in the pick and roll, and especially on offense, it's just going to be a lot more fluid, and I don't think there's a huge impact on defense, even though Ben Simmons is a DPOY level player. However, if Daryl Morey's throwing out shit like this, then a trade is not going to be able to happen, because this trade package that was reported is ridiculous, and it's just the dumbest thing I've ever seen. And this is coming from a Raptors fan who prides himself in being unbiased with trade package opportunities, with most teams, with being an avid NBA fan. But here's the trade, all right? The trade was Ben Simmons for Kyle Lowry, Fred VanVleet, OG Anunoby, and the fourth pick. From a salary perspective, I'm guessing there was something else from Philly's side, but either way, you'd be taking on a contract that is not ideal in any case. So I just don't understand this trade, and I don't understand why Toronto would make this deal. You're going to deplete your roster significantly. You're going to lose 3 young assets in return for 1 asset, even though I do think Ben Simmons has the highest ceiling out of the fourth pick, OG Anunoby, and Fred VanVleet. I just think it's a lot of young assets to give up. And it makes sense that Daryl Morey would propose this trade because he's trying to rip off Masai Ujiri. Obviously, Masai is smart. He's definitely not going to do a trade like that. If you were to trickle this trade down into Lowry, the fourth pick, and then a different asset, I think I would definitely consider that. Where you're getting Kyle Lowry, you're getting an all-star level player, you're going to get the fourth pick, which is a nice young player, or maybe Lowry and OG for Ben Simmons. Something like that makes a little more sense to me. But if you have to give up Fred VanVleet and the fourth pick, in addition, it just doesn't make any sense anymore for Toronto, because you're depleting that young core that you've spent time developing over the last few years. So all I'm going to say is, Daryl Morey, ridiculous. Come back to us when you have a realistic trade. This is just the dumbest thing I've ever seen, and the fans agree with that. Second thing on the dock today, the Raptors signed Earl Watson, former head coach of the Phoenix Suns. I don't have much to say about this other than it's good that we're bolstering up our coaching staff. As we know, with Toronto, they've lost a lot of coaches over the years, with like Nate Bjorken leaving, Minnesota taking a coach, and Sergio leaving as well. So the Raptors have taken a hit in terms of their team, I guess I should say, from like the front office and the coaching staff perspective. And I think that Masai Ujiri, re-signing Masai Ujiri is sort of looming as well, right? Because we're seeing a lot of loss from the Raptors' perspective. We could see Lowry leaving, just completely walking. We could see Gary Trent Jr. getting signed somewhere else. I got more on that in a second, but I just think that, you signed Earl Watson, that's great, but now you've got to really get that big fish in Masai Ujiri to re-sign, because he's the key to everything that we've seen in terms of success over the last 7 years in Raptors history. The Raptors have extended a qualifying offer to Gary Trent Jr. as expected, which makes him a restricted free agent as of August 2nd. And what that means, for those who don't know, is that the Raptors can now match any offer sheet that someone offers him. So if a team offers him 4 years, $80 million, Toronto would have to match that, and then they could re-sign him essentially. And depending on the offer sheet that he gets from a team, seeing how good he was last year, especially late in the year when he hits that game winner for Toronto, he has a 40-point game. He really showcased the type of potential he has as a really, really young player. So there is a little fear in my heart personally that we could see him having to re-sign for more than we want to bargain for, considering he was traded for Norman Powell as a cheaper re-sign in the future. If he ends up climbing close to that $15-20 million range, it could end up hurting Toronto on a yearly basis, especially considering they've already got OG, Fred VanVleet, and Siakam signed to 3 pretty big contracts that accumulate I think at least 60 to 65% of their cap space already. Another contract in that 15 to $20 million range could really cripple them over the next few years if they want to, try and get free agents, which is the next point that we're going to talk about, which is one of the more interesting ones, in that the Raptors are interested in signing restricted free agent Jarrett Allen, and they have to give him an offer that the Cavs would let him walk because he's restricted free agent. And like I said, this can't really happen unless Lowry walks. And what I mean by that is Toronto would basically have to say, we don't want to re-sign you. You're going to become a completely unrestricted free agent. Your bird rights are gone, right? Like, you can go sign with someone else. We don't care. And if that happens, first of all, Lowry won't be getting as big of a contract most likely, but also for Toronto, you would open up enough cap space to have somewhere in that $20 to $25 million range to offer a guy like Jarrett Allen that type of contract. I personally don't want to see that happen because the price is going to be too high for a free agent like that. But it's still an interesting concept because he would be a guy that would fit the bill, maybe a guy that could play alongside Khem Birch in terms of both them getting 20 to 25 minutes in that supporting role at the 5 position. And I think it would just be very interesting to see that type of team play out, especially considering his age. The next point, Pascal Siakam has been made available in trade talks. And I think Masai Ujiri right now is shopping him to see what type of value he has in the league. I'm sure teams have inquired about him because of the type of player he's been, how he kind of had a tough season, so maybe his value is lower than you'd expect. And I just think that you'd be getting something really good in return if Masai Ujiri was to actually pull the trigger and trade him. Specifically, a really good young player. I don't really know who. I haven't really thought about it enough to think about who it would be, but it would be some kind of proven young player, proven star, a young player with promise, potentially a team that wants to take the next step. I think maybe like if you're looking at, I don't know, the Indiana Pacers, the Charlotte Hornets, teams that want to take that next step. The Golden State Warriors are all interesting teams, and we've already talked about some packages there, but I just think it would be interesting to trade him or to at least look to see what options are available. But if I were to make a prediction, I don't think he's going to get traded because, like I said, his value is lower than it should be considering how good he was 2 years ago. And I even heard some people saying he's, they aren't even sure if he's a top 35 player in the league, which definitely has taken a dent on his reputation among media, which will translate probably to a lot of front offices. And I don't think Masai Ujiri is going to be getting really good packages in return for Pascal Siakam. They're going to try and undercut him, similar to the Ben Simmons experiment that's going on in terms of trying to trade for a guy when his value is low with the opportunity for him to rise. I just think that you got to wait on Siakam a little bit longer and maybe look to shop him because of how big his contract is. You need him to at least be a little more proven, and he's got the chance to do that. And I think being in front of fans will help him as well. Fingers crossed Toronto is able to play in Toronto. Second last point I got. Suitors for Lowry include the Sixers, Pelicans, Mavericks, Lakers, Heat. All of these teams are likely looking at a sign and trade. The Miami Heat are the only team that might be able to wiggle enough room to not do a sign and trade, but that would require letting some key players walk. And I just expect that Toronto is going to be involved in a sign and trade in the next coming days in early August here when free agency starts. And I'm super excited to see what happens with the Kyle Lowry stuff. It's sort of been building up and accumulating that all these different teams want him. You've got contenders that want him because of what Lowry's proven. You've got teams that are on the fringe who want to take a jump like the Pelicans and Mavericks, young teams with superstars who want to take a leap. Lowry would be perfect anywhere, and that's why I'm excited to see what happens. If Toronto's able to trade him, what kind of package they get back in return. It probably won't be a lot, like I said, because they don't have a ton of leverage in this situation. The only thing they have are his bird rights, which works well if Kyle Lowry wants a big contract, which it seems like he does, so we're good there. The last piece of news that came out is that JV has been traded to the Pelicans with the 17th and 51 picks for Steven Adams, Eric Bledsoe, 10th and 40th, and a protected first from the Lakers, as per Pelicans trading Anthony Davis a few years ago. I just think this is a weird trade. I don't really think it has to do with JV per se. It seems like a cap-based move for a lot of teams. You've got the Steven Adams monstrous contract, the Eric Bledsoe contract, the 10 and the 40, protected pick. So for Memphis, it makes sense because you move up in the draft. For the Pelicans, they're opening up cap space to potentially take a stab at a Kyle Lowry or some other free agent. And I think opening up that space does revoke a bit of leverage from Toronto, like I said, because now they've opened up a lot of cap space for the opportunity to add someone to their already young core. And maybe they're going to target a guy like Chris Paul. Maybe they target Lowry. We'll see what happens. But I think this is just a site that the Pelicans are looking to make a splash in the coming weeks. So I'm excited to see what happens. We've got a lot of good stuff coming up. The draft is in 2 days. All right? And so tomorrow I'm going to potentially be putting up a video about my draft predictions, my draft board, who I think is going where, who I think the Toronto Raptors are going to draft. Hint, hint, I think it's going to be Suggs most likely. But we will see what happens. Thank you for listening once again. If this is your first time visiting my page, make sure to subscribe. I'm going to give more content as the season progresses, and once the season starts, I'm going to definitely make an effort to post as much as I can, give you guys all the content you deserve. Thank you for being the best fans in the world. Peace out, everyone.